told you that one of the most iconic performances in film history also destroyed the man who made it? Bela Lugosi's Dracula launched 1,000 nightmares and one very real tragic curse. He became an overnight star, he defined the vampire, but then he couldn't escape him. I'm Antonia Carlotta, and this is Universally Me, the channel for all things Universal and classic horror. My family started Universal Studios, and they made the Universal monsters, including Dracula. And today, we're going to talk about Bela Lugosi and the price of cinematic immortality. Bela Lugosi was born Bela Ferenc Dejob Laszlo in Lugos, Hungary on October 20th, 1882. At just 12 years old, he dropped out of school and left home, and in 1902, he started his acting career on stage. In Budapest, he became a really respected actor. He changed his last name to Lugosi to honor his hometown and performed in Shakespeare and with the National Theatre of Hungary. But after World War I, tensions flared. He had supported the Actors Union and other leftist movements, and he was forced to leave. He went to Austria, Germany, and finally the United States in 1920. Life in America was not easy at first. He barely spoke English. He did find some work on stage and in film, but it was one production in 1927 that would change everything. A Broadway play called Dracula. When Bela Lugosi started playing Dracula, he owned it. The play was a massive success. After Broadway, he toured the country as Count Dracula for about 2 years, and he commanded the stage with his hypnotic presence, deliberate gestures, and signature delivery. But when Universal went into production on a movie in 1930, they didn't want him. Universal was struggling financially. It was the Great Depression, the industry had just transitioned from silent to sound, and my cousin Junior Lemley had just taken over as head of production at Universal at just 21 years old. And he was the one who really saw horror as a game-changing genre for the studio. At first, Universal wanted Lon Chaney to play Dracula. He was the king of makeup artistry, and he'd already shocked the world in movies like The Hunchback of Notre Dame and The Phantom of the Opera. But unfortunately, Lon Chaney passed away before production even started. So now the lead was up for grabs. But still, Bela Lugosi had to practically beg for it. Almost every other actor in Hollywood was considered before him, and I'm hardly exaggerating. Paul Muni, Conrad Veidt, Ian Keith, John Carradine, Chester Morris, just to name a few. There are so many more. And even when Bela Lugosi finally got the role, he had to accept a bare-bones salary to get it. Dracula began filming in 1930 with Todd Browning at the helm, but it wasn't an easy shoot. For some reason or another, Todd Browning was lacking a little focus. He was a little bit absent, which meant Karl Freund, the cinematographer, stepped in for a lot of the directing. Karl Freund came from the German Expressionist school of filmmaking. So between him and Todd Browning, you get this dark, shadowy, eerie Dracula that sometimes, with its slower pacing or lack of score, can feel a little bit slow to modern audiences. But there's something that allows pretty much everybody to look past that. And that something is Bela Lugosi. Bela was electric. He made the film. His eyes pierced through the screen. His voice, his accent, his cadence. It was unlike anything American audiences had ever heard before. And every line delivery was deliberate and unforgettable. Bela did not just play Dracula, he became Dracula. When Dracula hit theaters in February of 1931, it was a sensation. It spread real panic. Stories spread of audience members fainting in the aisles. Nervous attendees were told to bring smelling salts. It also saved Universal financially and marked the true launch of the Universal monsters. And above all, it made Bela Lugosi a star. Overnight, he was everywhere. He was so scary but sexy and alluring. People were really drawn to him. And he started making public appearances and meeting with fans and just really playing up that Dracula image that people so instantly associated him with. And I think that at first it was really fun for him. And Universal, they were really excited to cash in. But this is where the story kind of turns, because while Dracula brought Bela fame overnight, it also became this coffin that he couldn't escape. When it came time to cast Frankenstein later that year, another monster movie that would change film history, Bela Lugosi was the first choice to play the monster, but he turned it down. Or did he? The story of why Bela didn't play Frankenstein has been hotly debated for decades. And in fact, it is the subject of the book It's Alive by Julie and David Stone. So if you're a monster lover, you absolutely need to read that book. But one side of the Frankenstein casting legend says Bela Lugosi turned down the role. He saw the layers of makeup that he was going to have to wear, that he'd be basically unrecognizable, that he had almost no lines, and he thought he was too good for it. The other side says Universal turned him down, that they saw his test shoots and they didn't think he was scary enough. It wasn't what they were going for. And so they cast or recast Boris Karloff instead. Whatever the reason, this was a crucial career moment. Boris Karloff, who going into Frankenstein was so unknown that they felt comfortable crediting him with just a question mark, after Frankenstein is so famous that his name, just his last name, Karloff, is on posters as big as the titles of the movies he's starring in. And Bela is left somewhere in his shadow. Universal wanted to capitalize on both of its stars, so Bela and Boris would appear in several films together over the next decade. The Black Cat, The Raven, The Invisible Ray, The Son of Frankenstein. And they were always professional, but there was kind of a rivalry simmering beneath the surface. Boris Karloff would get praised, while Bela Lugosi was pigeonholed. And on almost all of their posters, Boris's name is either above or bigger than Bela's. Bela was typecast in pretty much every horror-adjacent film the industry could find. He played mad scientists and hypnotists and, of course, vampires. But the caliber of film was not up to, say, Dracula's caliber. And as the budgets shrank, so did Bela's paychecks. Bela wanted so badly to break out of this horror typecasting. He felt like he was so much more than that. But the studios just didn't share his vision. Even in the 1940s, when his career had something of a resurgence, it was still almost exclusively horror, sci-fi, and B-movies. By the 1950s, Bela was battling addiction. I think he was numbing both the physical pain that he felt from chronic sciatica, but also the emotional pain from having carried the Count with him for so long. And in fact, Bela was one of the first celebrities ever to publicly check themselves into rehab, which was brave. It was absolutely the right thing to do, but I think it also confirmed to the public that his star had fallen. He died a year later in 1956, virtually broke, and the rumor is that he chose to be buried with his Dracula cape. So was Bela Lugosi really cursed by Dracula? I mean, yes, in some ways. The role brought him more fame than he could have ever dreamed of. But it also locked him into this persona that he could never shake. No matter how hard he tried, he was always Dracula first and foremost. But also with the benefit of time, perspective. I mean, I guess it's maybe easy for me to say because I'm not Bela Lugosi myself, but it's also the role that made him immortal. He created one of the most enduring characters in film history. His performance shaped vampire lore and depictions in movies, from Christopher Lee to Nicolas Cage. And without Bela's Dracula, we probably wouldn't have like Count Chocula or Count Von Count from Sesame Street, Hotel Transylvania, and a slew of other scary or lovable vampires. Even your Spirit Halloween costume might look very different. Bela Lugosi might have been denied the respect he deserved from the industry in his lifetime, but today, especially amongst horror fans, he is a legend. And I think with new movies and documentaries and books, like even with the new Dark Universe at the Epic Universe in Orlando that just opened, Bela Lugosi's legacy is taking on a new and greater form. And that's not to say that he is finally escaping his vampire persona, but it's to say he doesn't need to. So let me know in the comments if you think Bela Lugosi was lucky or cursed. And don't forget, if you like these universal and classic horror deep dives, hit the subscribe, the like, the notification bell, share this with all of your friends, and don't forget, a great way to support my work is to join with a paid membership here on YouTube or on Patreon, and you also get bonus content. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.